It's your boy, that guy Malachi, coming at you with another video. I stream every day. Subscribe, drop a like on the video. We got Seti talking to whales, some advanced communication. Let's get
Has
into the video.
basically used whale communication as a way for scientists to figure out how one day we might have to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence, with the overall results and overall conclusions being somewhat intriguing as well. But before we discuss whales and SETI, let's actually talk about the idea of human-animal communication that existed for thousands of years, comparing all of this to the results from the study. And
Okay.
so, hello wonderful person, this is Anton. Let's talk about the idea of interspecies communication. And in this case, the species might not be from planet Earth. Now, obviously, simple communication with animals is not something that surprises anyone. Anyone with a pet knows that you can kind of communicate with your dog, your cat, and especially if you have a bird. But this type of a communication is maybe a little bit different because, to some extent, we're training these animals to understand us based on various visual, auditory, or other sensory cues. And intriguingly, a lot of interspecies communication on our planet that developed without any kind of training and basically developed naturally usually involves food. For example, this bird, known as honey guide, over hundreds and hundreds of years of seeing humans collecting honey from various beehives, developed a specific human call that can lead humans to new beehives
Okay.
that they would not know about otherwise, which
It's
is
pretty
obviously why they're
interesting.
called honey guides. And this is something that they seem to have developed over thousands of years of interaction with humans without anyone specifically training them. And this very specific human call seems to also differ depending on the region. It seems to be learned by each individual bird depending on the area, and it's not something they're born with. And the
Oh,
reason these
okay. They're
birds
not
do
born
this
with it. They
is
learn it
because
over
humans will
time.
leave a lot
That's
of
pretty cool.
leftovers and they'll get to eat some honey after all. Likewise,
All
in
for
a lot
that
of
honey.
ancient records from Roman Empire and even modern records from Brazil, there are cases of dolphins driving fish toward fishermen and then signaling them when to throw their nets. These
Yes.
signals are also
People
developed
using
very
dolphins to
differently
fish.
depending on the region,
It's
with
pretty
dolphins
cool.
then participating in the
Not
catch
gonna lie.
because it makes it so much easier for them to eat fish when they're separated from the larger school. But each pod of dolphins seems to have individual human calls once again. Then we have our weird friends orcas that we're going to be discussing in a separate video, but here there are known records from the 19th century where several orca pods in different parts of Australia would herd large whales toward whaling ships and even allowing
Oh
them to
my
be killed
gosh, they'd
faster.
herd
In other
large
words,
whales
orcas
towards whaling
assisted
ships to
in
kill them?
whaling back in the
That's
day.
friendly
And they did
fire.
this because basically they got to eat a lot of parts humans didn't care about, things like tongues and lips, and that's their favorite. We'll talk about this in a separate video. But in order to communicate with humans, they would smack the water in a very specific way, alerting the whaling ships. Basically telling humans where the whales were hiding or telling humans that the whales were
Orcas are
approaching. Then we
demons.
obviously have a lot of stories about chimps, gorillas, and orangutans communicating using sign language or through technological means such as touchscreen. Not to mention we have some really extreme
Not a
examples of
gray,
some
not a
animals
gray
like the
macaw.
famous gray parrot named Alex learning hundreds of words that he was able to pronounce really well, being able to even use simple grammar in order to communicate where he wanted to go. But in this case, he was only about 80% accurate most of the time. But I think the most extreme example of all of this
That's
once again
crazy.
comes from dolphins. There was a very strange experiment back in the 60s, known as the Lily experiment, where the researcher locked himself up with a 6-year-old dolphin for approximately 2 months, living in a partially submerged house. And
Wait,
during
he
this time, they
literally
basically
flooded
taught
his
each
house to
other
live with a
to
dolphin?
communicate by using different sounds. And at some point, apparently, this dolphin was able to mimic basic English, at least according to the
Can
book that was
mimic
written about
English?
this. There are no actual videos and no actual recordings, so unfortunately it's
Oh,
impossible
it's
to
all
know
just
how
hearsay.
accurate this is.
Okay.
But these two examples of the parrot and the dolphin show us something really important about animal communication. At least some animals seem to possess the idea of grammar. They don't just basically communicate using single words, they communicate using sentences with certain meaning, or can at least be trained to do so, which suggests that this is something innate to them and something that's possible to acquire. But this type of animal communication depends on situational cues. For example, when you scold your dog is going to hear your angry voice and is going to know something is wrong and thus respond
Yeah, true.
accordingly. This
It's
type
not like
of
he's really
cue-based
understanding you.
communication is maybe not the same as what SETI and various language theorists want to actually understand. Because if we do meet some kind of an alien, they're unlikely to have body language cues or even sound cues that would be similar to anything we're used to. But various language sciences Do you want to understand how to retrieve information from any kind of a signal from intelligent species? It doesn't matter if it's a dog, a cat, or a whale. And
Hmm.
so the main
Okay,
point behind this
that's pretty
study,
cool.
that as always you can find in the description below, is to create natural conditions where we have no idea what communication is being used, but to then attempt it anyway by figuring out various patterns. And so as I mentioned before, this was a collaboration between
So when do they use
Alaska
the
Whale
satellites to
Foundation,
talk to the
marine
whales?
scientists studying whales, and Seti, with the mission being an attempt to communicate with humpback whales. Whales known for being somewhat curious when it comes to humans, but also whales known for their incredibly long and loud songs that can be heard from thousands of kilometers away and can even last for half an hour. Here's an example of such a song that lasted approximately 30 seconds, and it basically sounded something like this. But the experiment itself was very simple. Previously, scientists recorded one of the calls used by whales in order to
Some
communicate with each other. This
very
call goes
interesting
something like this,
creatures.
and it
Too
came
bad
from
they
a
were
whale
damn near
that the
hunted to
scientists
extinction.
referred to as twain. And here the whale researchers believe this is a type of a contact call, basically the whale announcing that they're there, or maybe just saying, "Hello, wonderful person," or "wonderful whale." They then went to the location where the whales often appeared and used the same contact call to see if any whales would respond. And after waiting just a little bit, Twain swam up to the boat. And in this case didn't just swim to the boat, but started circling around it, trying to figure out what's going on. And so for the next 20 minutes, scientists replayed the same call 36 times, but did so by varying intervals. And strangely enough, Twain mimicked everything they did. For example, if there was 10-second interval between calls, Twain also kept 10 seconds between his calls before responding. Now, obviously, here they weren't really saying much. They possibly were just saying hello or my name is Twain, to which the whale replied, my name is also Twain. Or possibly they just kept saying hello, hello to each other. I mean, we don't really know what the
Twain
message
away.
means, but the important part in this case is that this was the first such communication between humans and humpback whales, but in this case using their own language. Not
Right?
something we train them to do, not something that mimics English, for example, using humbackanese for the lack of better words.
Bacanese
And
is
so even
now a
though in
word,
terms of
yo.
actual communication, not a lot of information was exchanged, the important part here was the conversational style. There was a clear understanding between the whale and the researchers. And for SETI researchers, this is a really important discovery, because whales' behavior potentially mimics how we might one day communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence if it exists. So this was our practice run for the first contact. But more importantly, the behavior itself is really important as well. Whales are obviously intelligent species. Actually, their brains are much bigger than ours and contain more neurons. And so the fact that the whale approached us and wanted to try to communicate and was actually curious enough to continue the communication implies that intelligent alien races might do the same. Just like the whale responded to the scientists, ET intelligence, if they receive our calls, might also want to respond as well. But obviously in this case there is a major difference. This is still planet Earth, this is still animals genetically similar to us in a lot of different ways, and this is still based on intelligence produced by neurons in a brain. Quite a lot of SETI researchers do believe that extraterrestrial intelligence potentially might be entirely different and potentially be completely incomprehensible. But by trying to study various
Is that
types
a
of
furry in your butt?
intelligences on the planet, including the idea of, for example, bacterial intelligence that we've briefly discussed in some of the previous videos in a description, we might come up with guidelines that can help us understand what alien intelligence communication might be
I
like
wonder where you get
and
this
potentially
B-roll
develop
from.
strategies for that
You got some
approach
nice ass
contact.
B-roll.
But in this case, the most important discovery is of course the fact that if you're intelligent, you might also be curious and you might also make contact. But in
Okay.
order to ensure that this is a universal intelligence phenomenon, the researchers are hoping that other studies are going to be conducted with various other animals, especially animals with large brains, dolphins, elephants, or certain birds. And then one day, we might even find out what the whales are actually talking about. And that's going to be a huge breakthrough as well. For now though, this unusual 20-minute conversation is a small but a very important breakthrough when it comes to interspecies communication.
See y'all talking
But
to the
where all
whales
this
now?
goes,
Who
I
else y'all
guess we'll
talking
find
to
out in some
now?
of the future studies. Check out other previous studies from SETI
Governments
in the description
and
below.
people's
Thank you for
sleeps.
watching,
Hmm?
subscribe, share
Whole
this with someone who loves
nations.
learning about space and sciences. Come back tomorrow to learn something else. Support this channel on Patreon by joining channel membership or by buying the Wonderful Person t-shirt you can find in the description. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye bye.
That was the video, yo. It was a great video.